Well, here's an interesting one that's come up on our radar. VMware VCSP customers are seeing 10x price increases.
Correct.
What's the story with that? What's going on
Okay.
here?
So number one, VMware got bought over by Broadcom, and as expected, Broadcom has decided to increase the overall fees or charges for two categories of customers. Number one is a lot of customers who basically had one-time license purchases. They are moving everyone to subscription-based model. So you basically have to pay every year instead of the one-time fees that a lot of customers had. They are sunsetting a bunch of products that were free and readily available to everybody for non-paying customers as well, but that's going away as well. And then for VCSP customers, basically these are customers who basically operate almost like uh, MSPs. For a lot of these customers, they have basically now got a minimum, apparently, number of cores that they have to buy, which
This is
makes
saying
their
3,500.
correct. So they basically have to go to 3,500 cores at a minimum. And that is basically going to be a huge sticker shock for a lot of these MSP like customers of VMware.
And that's from an increase. It's saying previous an MSP could have 50 customers, but maybe 500 to 600 cores running
Yeah,
VMware. Now the new minimum is 3,500 cores.
correct. So that's a huge, huge bump, right?
Yeah, people are saying they're seeing 10x price increases.
So again, the on-prem world is changing fast, and I think it's more and more of an incentive to switch over quickly to the cloud, get your workloads moved to the cloud so that it's easier, cheaper, more cost-effective to manage and maintain. And you can use tools like Cloud Endure on AWS to literally start replicating your VMware images as is and get them into AWS and get started over there right away.
Yeah, this is a big change to be aware of. And I'm sure if you're affected by this, it is a very pressing matter. So hopefully, yeah, use Cloud Endure, AWS Cloud Endure, that will help you transition VMware images into AWS. And then,
Correct.
how does it work? Do they become AMIs, or how does that? How do you
Yes,
use
so
that?
they actually become AMIs, and then you can have live to live replication with Cloud Endure. So you can have an instance that's started up on AWS, and you can have your VMware image. And while the images are running, or while those instances are running, they will replicate against each other and get current. And once that replication is complete, you can turn off the old one and switch over to the new one.
Just change
It's
something in
that
the
simple.
DNS, and then you're pointed at the new server,
Correct. And
ready to
you're
go.
ready to go. Exactly.
Wow. Well, yeah, that is a big change to be aware of. So hopefully, if this affects you, there is a path outward, and that is Cloud Endure by AWS. So you can switch
Correct.
over those images.
There is one other solution that might be a good stopgap measure where you basically use VMware services, manage VMware services on AWS, and that might be an easier step. Where if you already have all your image files and stuff like that, it might be easier to replicate across into the AWS environment on VMware itself, so that you have like for like setups. And once you're there and everything is working, then you can start carving out pieces into EC2 instances more natively. So again, there are multiple ways to do this. Your situation might call for some specific cases, but at least you don't have to pay 10x to your cloud to your MSP now or to VMware.
No, and then it's like we've talked about with migrations, right? There's that lift and shift, and then you start thinking, how do I adopt more cloud native? Maybe
Right.
if one of those part of your VMware usage included a database, you could replace that with a cloud native solution. Same with caching, same with OpenSearch, that sort of thing. Replace those with their managed equivalents, and that can buy you time and buy you budget
Correct.
to then do the big serverless rewrite, or however you're going to
Yeah.
architect to be
If you
fully
have a
cloud
very
native.
big legacy product, I would say don't try to rewrite the entire product, because I think there's a point of diminishing return, and it's really hard to get parity between or get feature parity between originally a monolithic architecture and a monolithic application, and then when you transform that into a completely serverless architecture, you are going to see some fundamental differences. in the way the system operates. And then the expectations of customers and the expectations of the users of the systems invariably is that the behavior will continue to remain the same. And that almost never happens. So I think you're going to end up in disappointment, even though you might have a better system at the end of the day. It's easier, on the other hand, to say, I'm going to build a whole new system from scratch, only spend maybe 10 or 15,000 lines of code to kind of achieve the core value proposition of the product, but it's going to be lighter, it's going to be simpler, it's going to be more scalable, more elastic. All of that stuff is going to be great, but it's a different product. And if you have that separation of messaging, I think you'd be far more successful in getting your customers' mind share and getting them to adopt or adapt the new product as well.
Well, and you don't just want feature parity, but if you're trying to do like for like, you even need bug parity. Because if you have something that's been out in the wild for a long time, people know the
Yes.
bugs and they've developed workarounds. And then when
Correct.
you, as part of your re-engineering, fix the bugs, well, now the workarounds don't work.
Correct. And there's a lot of customization and craft that's developed in a lot of these old monolithic products over decades that is really hard to match up like for like as you're building a new system in a completely different operating model.
Yeah. So V2, don't do feature for feature. Do that Pareto optimal core set of
Yes.
features that you can get done in a lightweight shell,
Correct.
and not having to replicate every last corner case that's been in your old code base for decades, possibly
Exactly.
decades.
Keep it as a separate product altogether. And yeah, the new product should be cheaper, lighter, more efficient, and better in every way. And that's a great incentive for customers to move to the latest product.
Yeah, because you can't manage it forever. So what is Broadcom's end game here? It's just the trade-off between a smaller amount of very high-paying customers is more worthwhile than
Yes.
lots of low-paying customers.
That's absolutely right. And because it costs a lot to manage and maintain every customer, everything from customer support to bug fixes, you really want to have a small number of very high paying customers as an ideal business model that's very efficient, that's easier to manage, easier to maintain. So it makes sense from Broadcom's standpoint. I think it's just a whole lot of VMware customers who are basically going to bear the brunt of these decisions.